Let's talk about Three Hearts and Three Lions by Poul Anderson. So in this book, Holger, he's a member of the Danish Resistance in World War II. He's on a vital mission to stop the Nazis, to rescue a nuclear physicist, and he's shot. And he wakes up in a fantasy version of medieval Europe, where the forces of law hold back the forces of chaos. There's a parallel here between his two locations. It's a classic heroic fantasy, published in 1961, expanded from a 1953 novella. It's portal fantasy, and Holger becomes a knight, or rather he is a knight. People think he's the hero of law, the champion of law. He's got his own suit of armour, he's got his own coat of arms. People know who he is better than he knows himself. He's Holger the Dane, the famous companion of Charlemagne. He doesn't remember this though. Holger does know science though, so he thinks his way through the problems. There's a Connecticut Yankee in the Court of King Arthur touch to that, where he's sort of looking and thinking, well, does that make sense? How would that work? How do we defeat this? How do we solve this problem? Gradually, he accepts the world around him, and he forms deep relationships with his companions. The Swan May, Alianora, a Swan May being a girl who can shapeshift into a swan, and the noble Saracen warrior, Carahue. They fight many foes of the forces of chaos, trolls and so on, in a picaresque journey across the land. So what can we say about it? Well, first, maybe get some of the neutral out of the way. Anderson's writing style is intentionally flat and easy to read. It's reminiscent of the more general style of the rising generation of the 50s and 60s, the early part of the new wave in sci-fi and fantasy. It's not as explicitly dry as Asimov, for instance, but and it's not as pulpy as the previous generation of writers. This is not anywhere from Burroughs through to Howard and Lovecraft and so on. It's a lot more matter of fact than that. But it's nothing special. But let's talk about why this is a fun novel. The characters are really fun. Alianora is a striking creation. Imagistically is a striking creation, as a Swan May. But is also a brave and impressive character, and a worthwhile cohort to Holger. Carahue, he's the trope of the noble Saracen, which is not a noble savage trope. The noble Saracen is in European literature traditionally, it is more like in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, where Morgan Freeman is a man as civilized or more civilized than the English he goes with Kevin Costner to see. This archetypally, you see this in the friendship also between, the rivalry, the respectful rivalry between Saladin and Richard the Lionheart, or you see it reflected in Francis of Assisi's visit to the Sultan of Egypt, and the kind of mutual respect there. The idea the noble Saracen is somehow other, but also recognisably civilised. And this could just be a trope, but here it's executed quite well. Carahue is mysterious and confusing, but he's also an amazing, there's an amazing friendship and relationship between Carahue and Holger, especially marked because, a bit like with Robin Hood or with Richard the Lionheart, Holger is a crusader, a proto-crusader, in the sense that he has helped defend Spain against the Moors. Holger's tension between his own idea of his own identity and what's true of him in the world is the centre of the character dynamics, the centre of the relational tensions. Can he accept the relationships he's forming or not? Can he accept the circumstances enough to defeat them? I don't think really it's comparable to the confusion and refusal to believe in the Thomas Covenant books by Stephen Donaldson. But there's just a note of that same kind of, can I deal with this? Can I accept this? Am I crazy? Why is this happening? There's a bit of that. And the imagery is iconic. It's fresh. I'll have a separate Appendix N video to talk about the influence of this on Dungeons and Dragons. But more particularly for the book, the point is that these are still iconic fantasy images. The troll is something that has influenced imagery in fantasy. as a very different troll to the Tolkienian troll. That, you know, they're related. You see them merge in the later literature, but this regenerating, fire-fearing troll is distinct. The Swan May is a great image as well, and generally speaking, there is a heroic tone that is quite compelling, as well as some dry wit. He is funny at points. I'm not sure that this is a cast iron central canonical entry. You know, you got 100 fantasy books. This one's here. Many people might say that the Lyonesse cycle was the better one to turn to for fantasy cast iron classic, but I do think it's canonical. It's very creative, and it doesn't soar, but it is very fun. If you read it, what did you think? Tell me in the comments.